Hello, I'm Veronique Mandal. Welcome to Scribes and Songsters. On this edition of the show, I'll introduce you to a writer who has a special relationship with our show. Then you'll meet an award-winning writer who writes poetry, short stories, and chapbooks. She's also co-publisher of a local publishing company. And in addition to all that, we will, of course, introduce you to a couple of talented local musicians. I'm so glad you've joined me. Well, Brian Sweet not only happens to be the executive producer of this show, but he's also a writer. Brian does a terrific job each episode behind the camera, but now that we're halfway through our first season, I insisted that we get him out in front of the camera to talk about his own books. Brian has published one novel, Newbridge, and has produced a series of 3 children's books featuring Freddie Farmer. He's also been involved in the local community, helping to organize writing workshops and other literary events. Brian, welcome to our show.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be here.
Yes, it's nice to see you on this side of the camera for a change.
I think I do a better job on the other side.
Yeah.
But,
Now, you were retired. What did you retire from?
Yes. Well, I was a lawyer. I was the solicitor for the town of Leamington for 28 years. But I retired a couple years ago, and so now I have more time to write and do shows like this.
When did you start writing? Is that something you did from being very young or something you came late to?
Oh, I think I started writing about 15 writing books about 15 years ago. In my job, of course, I wrote a lot, but they were like reports to council and agreements and contracts and things like that.
I was going to say, probably not creative, but sometimes creative.
Well, you had to be short and concise or they wouldn't read it. So, you had to be, so that was good practice for when you get into writing novels and things. But I started writing probably about 15 years ago, and I've published some magazine articles too, and I won a short story contest, the Stephen Leacock one in Aurelia for, they'd have a festival every year. And one year I won that, and that was one of the highlights of my writing career.
I was going to say, that's pretty impressive. I mean, that's a prestigious award.
Well, yeah, it was. But something I'm proud of. But anyway, that's kind of how things started, and it's fun. I really love writing. So
did you write the children's, the Freddie Farmer books before your novel?
Oh, no, the novel came first, and the novel is about a small town in Essex County, and it's located on the shores of Lake Erie. And if you figure it out from the stories, it would be situated about halfway between Kingsville and Leamington, because I work in Leamington, and I worked in Leamington and live in Kingsville. And so I put the town halfway in between, and of course, all the characters are made up, but people from both towns would tell me they think they knew who everybody was and stuff. But
did anybody ever come and say to you, "Is that me?"
Yes, I had 2 people do that, and I don't know if they believe me. It wasn't them, but that's fun though. That's fun when people come. The book, it's a humorous book, and it's just about life in a small town and kind of things that can happen. And it took, even though it's a short book, it takes a lot of work. I mean, you have to, well, for me it did, it takes a long time to write a book like that. And then people read it in 3 hours,
Yeah.
But still, it was fun. And then it was after that with the children's books, Harold Burton, who's a well-known artist in Leamington, and he's well known across the county and in Windsor, he came to me one day, and he had this idea. He wanted to do some children's books. He wanted to do the artwork for them, and he had a sketch of this little farmer boy, and of a horse and a couple things like that. And he said his idea was this little boy who owned a farm, and there's no adults in the book. It's the little boy, and his friends are the animals. But he said he couldn't come up with a story. So he asked me if I knew someone who could. And I said, well, I'll try it. Because up until that point, I had no intention of writing a children's book. And so I put something together and gave it to him, and he liked it. And so he started doing all the artwork for it. Now, anybody who writes children's books knows if they can't do artwork themselves, illustrators are very, very expensive.
Yes.
So this worked out good for me because it was Harold's idea, and so it was like a partnership. He'd do the pictures and I'd write the story. It's just so much fun working with Harold when he did those things. And even when we had it published, when we first sent it off to be published and they sent it back, when they sent the first one back, he looked at it and it looked fine to me. I mean, the colors, you could look at the painting and look at that. They were slightly off, but it looked pretty good. Harold was he said, well, that's no good. We can't have that.
A true artist.
So we sent it back and he said, these reds have to be deeper and these blues. And of course they did it all and it came back and as you can see, it was a very, very good result. But it's so much fun working on any project, whether it's a children's book or anything. When you're working with someone else who's very creative, and especially when they're creative in a field that you're no good at. Yeah. Like I can't draw or paint at all.
No, I'm a stick person myself.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And so when you work with somebody like that and you give them a story and you kind of tell them what you picture with each page, and he sat there and listened patiently, and then he just went and painted what he wanted to, and it was very good. It was better that he didn't pay any attention to me and did his paintings.
I really love Freddie. I think he's a really cool looking kid. Did he have somebody in mind, or was this just from his imagination?
Oh, just from his imagination. And he even made a little clay model of Freddie Farmer. That sometimes when we've gone to book shows to sell the books, we've put out the little model of Freddie. But he's an amazing artist.
It would make a great cartoon.
Oh, it would.
Yeah.
And we've sold some of them to local daycares and nurseries, and I've just had a terrific response from them. You know, a couple of them came back and said, "Oh, it's the kids' favorite book." You know,
yeah.
And it's good for kids up to about age 5 or 6. You know, when they're younger than that, they just look at the pictures. But then as they get a little older, it's good to kind of read. They'll read with you and things, and so that's about the age group they're geared for.
Did you think of doing any more in the series? You've got 3.
Well, we kind of did one at a time. Like first we were just going to do one book. And we did the book, and after it was done, we really liked it and we enjoyed it and sold it. And so one of us asked the other, I can't remember which, you want to do another? And we said, sure. So then we did a second book and we enjoyed doing that one. So then we did a third book. Because keep in mind, each one of those books, didn't take me as long to write the story, but Harold, when he has to do a painting of each one, takes quite a bit of work and a length of time to get that finished.
How long would it take him to do one of the books?
Well, with everything together, I think we were coming out with like one book a year. Now, I don't think it took him a full year to do the whole thing, but I mean, and there's other things you got to go through in the process to publish a book, but so we were coming out with about one a year. But it did take him a while to do those. And we did have one big thrill with the book. I mean, we did, sell a fair number and got good results. But Harold has a niece, I should say, who knew someone from Shanghai who published a children's magazine. And he comes to North America occasionally, and the niece saw him the one time and told him about these books and gave him copies. And then the next year when he came over, he had a check for us because he had published the first one in his magazine. His magazine comes out once a month, and it's in Shanghai, and it has a circulation of about 80,000. Which is probably a small percentage in Shanghai, but that sounded pretty good to us. And so, and our book was published in Chinese, and he gave us a copy of the magazine, and it's fun to look at Freddie Farmer talking, Cantonese, and the animals are talking Chinese and everything. What's
next?
Well, I'm working. No, there's no. Harold and I aren't going to do any more Freddie Farmer books. We both have other projects to work on. I'm working on another novel, so there's no more children's books in the immediate future anyway. And it's a lot of fun. And I'm about 3/4 of the way through that book right now, and hopefully maybe by next year it'll be finished.
So you can come back and tell us about it.
Well, maybe we'll see.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's lovely to have you sitting across from me.
Well, it's good to be here.
When we come back, we'll meet our second guest, Laurie Smith. But now, we're pleased to feature Windsor's Sarah and Ryan Fontaines as our musical guests today. Ryan and Sarah are both talented musicians, and combined with Sarah's thoughtful lyrics, they make delightful music together. They're going to play one of their original songs, Stars in Our Eyes. Here they are, the Fontaines.
So this song, obviously Ryan is playing the guitar. It's pretty obvious. He came up with this guitar part, and I was like, I have lyrics for that. So this is the song that came out of that. Yeah, this is Stars in Our Eyes. Born in the month of June, when spring pretends to be summer, and perhaps that's why I long to be another. I couldn't wait to find that magic girl I knew that I'd become. Tried so hard to forget where I came from. When we are young, the rules aren't written, so we dream big and we love hard, hard, hard. Take for granted all the lies in our yard. When we are young, time doesn't matter. All we need are wings to fly, fly, fly. We can't see for all the stars in our eyes. Those days of innocence, when play was all but reality, swimming pools, and who could climb the biggest tree, watching the sun go down with eyes that didn't care for beauty, yeah. Catching fireflies with escaping our beds. When we are young, the rules aren't written, so we dream big and we love hard, hard, hard. Take for granted all the lies in our yard. When we are young, time doesn't matter. All we need are
That was Sarah and Ryan Fontaine, some very talented Windsor artists. I'm Veronique Mandal, and you're watching Scribes and Songsters. Well, Laurie Smith is one of the publishers and editors of Windsor's Cranberry Tree Press. She's also an award-winning poet and author of short fiction. Now, for those writers watching the show, we're going to discuss the services Cranberry Tree offers to authors. But first, we're going to have Laurie tell us about her recently released book. It's poetry, and it's entitled Said the Cannibal. Laurie, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for asking me to be here.
I love your title. Tell me how you came up with it.
It comes out of one of the poems in the collection, and a line is, said the cannibal, tongue-in-cheek. And I just kind of wanted something sassy for the cover that balances the dirty, nasty poems that are in there. You know, it's a dark subject, but there's a lot of fun stuff. Cannibalism is a hoot. And I thought it was a nice blend.
Yeah. Is there something that you want to convey by that title? Or is it just something, you know, or would you use that because you know people are going to want to pick it up?
That was what my publisher was hoping for when we settled on that as the title, yes.
Now, how many poems are in the book?
Probably about 65 to 70. I can't remember exactly. One of them, kind of the feature poem Dahmer, about Jeffrey Dahmer, is a very long piece, and it's over 13 pages in itself. But the book itself is about 100 pages.
How long did it take you to write?
I started back in January. I'd seen an episode of Secrets of the Dead, and it was on a girl they named Jane, whose skull and bone they'd found in the Jamestown settlement in a dig there. And they were exploring whether there was any truth to the rumor that there had been cannibalism taking place there. And I was just fascinated with it. And then after the program, I ran into my office and I wrote this long poem called For Jane Who Was Eaten. And I sent it to Dan Lockhart, publisher, a friend of mine with Urban Farmhouse Press. And he said, that's fabulous. Can you do more of those? We can do a whole book. Okay.
That's pretty
That
exciting.
sounds like fun.
Yeah.
And then I just started, scribbling down the way I brainstorm, just making a big web of all of the different subjects or everything I know about cannibalism and which is not a lot going in. I want to get that. I want to get that out
cannibalism.
there. People know I spend a lot of time in the kitchen. I love to cook, but no. Let's just get that out of the way first. But it just spread out into things that I know, things like Long Pig and Jeffrey Dahmer and the Donner Party, Franklin Expedition, the Andes Mountains, everything.
Right.
And then when I talked to people, they kept saying, "Oh, you got to write about this, and you've got to write about that, and do you know about this one?" And sending me newspaper articles and stuff. And it just became very fascinating in its own quirky, dark, fun way. And I was also exploring the humorous side of it, the satirical side of it. And it's been a really interesting diversion this year.
I can imagine. When I think about cannibalism, I think about that iconic picture of a person in a cauldron, and like a bone on their head and whatever.
That's in the book. Yes, it's called. That's the poem that's called "Funny Ha Ha."
Yeah.
And I talk about that, about exactly that point when we were kids and we're of the same generation. That was a common cartoon, and that was a common image. In Gilligan's Island, you'd always see the white guy in the cauldron, probably with a pith helmet on or something, and the restless natives dancing around him while he's steaming and calling for help. And we laughed about that,
we
we just
did.
thought it was hilarious, that cliche.
Now, do you have favorites? I've got a few, but I'll let you tell me yours.
I've got a couple of, the fun favorite, short favorites. I've only read the Dahmer poem once at a reading, and it's a long poem to read, so I wouldn't attempt it here. But I get into it, and the audience was
mesmerized, I bet.
Just frozen by the end of it, and so was I. So to read, at my launch, probably that'll only be the second time I read the whole thing. And I like reading some of the fun ones just because they've got a lot of language in them and musicality, which is important to me. Sound is incredibly important to me in the poetry as well. So, I do like to mix it up.
So read us one.
What do I want to do? I'm going to start with something familiar. And this is, again, one of these things people say, well, what about this? What about this? And most people will recognize the reference here. New York 2022. Soylent Green takes place 5 years from now. Inconceivable. Conceivable. Look at this mess. Dystopian literature is hot. Children play at zombie apocalypse. I guess the same as we used to pretend war, pointing our fingers, rat-a-tat-tat, you're dead. Like on TV. Of course, this is just make-believe. I'm afraid. Past useful, so yes, I'll admit it, I'm afraid. It's all about the packaging of those little green protein wafers.
I love it. I love what you've done with that, because that movie I found was one of the most chilling movies I have ever watched.
5 years from now? That's funny, eh?
Yeah.
Or not.
No, not.
Or not. And it was the seniors they disposed of first.
Yes. God help us.
TikTok.
Okay, do you want to read one more?
I want to read I'll do a funny one. I do this one a lot because I just like to hold up the paper so people don't check it out. This is called Muffin Top. You have a muffin top, and there's been a zombie apocalypse or nuclear holocaust, and the earth is frozen around your cave where only your family is left to repopulate the world, and all the dogs and cats and squirrels and rats have been eaten. Now your grandchildren are gnawing on tree bark and shoe leather in desperation. So do you sacrifice yourself entirely, or just let someone cut away the flabby parts while you're biting on a rock? Underarm wings like chicken, pork belly rolls, and easy 2 slits and makeshift duct tape pulling the seams back together. You won't miss it. Always wanted to lose the spare tire. Lumpy steaks from inner thighs, a block of ice between your legs to numb the pain. And the kids would never have to know. You'll sit huddled in a corner and tell them stories to pass the time, while the hardy now are able to venture farther afield for something flammable, or to look for other survivors, plump and friendly.
They're wonderful. They're wonderful. And I'm looking forward to getting through the whole book. I would love to talk about the ones that I really like, but I do want to talk about Cranberry Tree Press before you go, and to make sure that people know also where your launch is and where to get your book. Tell us about Cranberry Tree Press, and because it's not like a traditional publishing house, is it?
It's a cooperative publishing service. Lenore Langs and I started it about 20 years ago. And what that means is people, yes, they pay for our services, but we are very selective in the work that we want to publish. And we provide editing services. We insist on editing services, and we do all the layout and design. We don't want to hear, well, my daughter edited it for me and she gets A in English. No, it's our name is on the cover.
Yeah.
And out of respect for all of our other clients, we want to put out an excellent literary product. So yeah, we go through that process working with our clients, and we do the layout and design, registration, ISBN number, have it printed and packaged and sent to you. Turnaround time is typically 3 to 6 months, depending on what sort of work it is, the length of it, how complex it is. And we can be easily found at cranberrytreepress.com.
So, and is the cost, does it fluctuate depending on the size of the book, etc.?
Absolutely, yeah. The how complicated the project is. Like if you've got illustrations and layout and design is going to cost a little bit more. Page count is important as far as editing costs and as far as printing costs goes, and what kinds of materials you prefer to use, number of copies that you would like to have done. Obviously, the more copies you have done, price goes down, just as in any bulk service. And we're very realistic when we deal with people who think, well, I should have 5,000 copies of my book done because I'm going to sell them all over the place. You're going to have an awful lot of boxes of books in your garage, so it's good to be realistic, and we're also honest with people if we feel that it's probably not a great investment for you at this time. Perhaps you should consider taking some workshops and trying out the market on, smaller pieces, short story submissions or poetry, whatever it is first, and see how you're doing with that before you make this investment. So, like I said, we decline a lot of people. It's not just, here's my book, print it for me. There are printing presses in town you can take a disc to and have that done. That's not what we do.
That's terrific. And I think that's good for authors to know that when they go to Cranberry Tree Press, that they're actually going to get a quality consultation and a quality product in the end.
We're very proud of our work.
So I'm really thrilled to bits that you came to talk about your poetry. Mm-hmm. When is your launch?
October 30th, the day before Halloween, of course.
What a terrific time to do that.
There'll be finger foods and Bloody Marys and all sorts of things.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for asking me to be here. I've had fun.
Me too. So, for more information about Laurie's work or to find out more about publishing your own work, you can contact her at Cranberry Tree Press. Well, that's it for another edition of Scribes and Songsters. It goes way too fast. Thanks to our guests, and join us again, I hope, right here on your TV.